Operation Mount Hope 3, the secret US operation to steal a Soviet Hind. In today's video, we're going to talk about Operation Mount Hope 3, a top-secret US military operation to steal a Soviet MiL Mi-25 Hind D helicopter, an export model of the Soviet Mi-24. During the 1980s, the Soviet Union maintained good relationships with some Asian and African countries because it distributed military equipment to them to compete against the West. Libya, for example, was one of those countries, and it looked forward to buying Sukhoi fighters and MiGs to strengthen its air force. An arms race was taking its course seriously, especially between the USSR and the USA. At that time, it seemed like the USSR had a mild advantage, particularly thanks to the Soviet Hind. Hind was a remarkable invention at the time. It was a heavily armed attack gunship that provided space for 8 fully armed soldiers inside. Unlike any previous aircraft, Hind could transport soldiers to warfare and stay with them for support from the air. Not only that, but Hind could also perform on its own with only 2 crew and without any infantry whatsoever, causing a lot of damage on its own. So, when some innovation in the world of military hardware takes place in one country, you might assume that some other countries want to steal the patent. And that's exactly what happened. The USA put Hind on its wish list because American soldiers primarily used aircraft like UH-1 Huey to transport soldiers to war, and that aircraft was mildly equipped at best. The USA, not satisfied with this, realized that the USSR was taking a lead in the arms race. Additionally, the Hueys had machine guns by the door that mostly served as defensive weapons, rather than offensive ones, as was the case with the Hind. Hind's first use and American acquisition. Hind was introduced in the late 1970s, and it immediately held the CIA's and British intelligence agencies' interest. Ethiopia's alleged use of Hind on the battlefield was an event that put Hind on the pedestal. Hind was also efficiently used in the USSR's operation in Afghanistan against the Mujahideen fighters. The desire to inspect Hinds emerged among Western intelligence, as well as a potential need to put together an equivalent airstrike in order to stay in the race. An ideal event that allowed all of this to take place was an abandoned Libyan Mi-25 in Chadian territory in 1989. Of course, this is easier said than done, as there were several sides involved, and each one of them wanted its share of the cake. The American government managed to successfully negotiate with Chadian and French governments to seal a deal to acquire the damaged Libyan Mi-25 Hind from Chad, more precisely from Kadi Daoum. In exchange, the USA paid $2 million and FIM-92 Stinger missiles. The U.S. Army's 160th Special Ops Aviation Regiment was assigned to transport the helicopter to the USA. Viewers who are familiar with military assets understand that this was a high price to pay, but it was indeed inevitable. How did the Hind end up in Kadi Daoum? Throughout history, Libya and Chad had a lot of friction, mostly due to never-ending attempts from Libyan dissidents to take over the Chadian government. Meanwhile, the Libyan government had an eye on the sovereign territory of Chad and wanted to occupy it. And that, expectedly, made the situation far worse. After countless attempts of expelling Libyan forces from Chadian borders, the Chadians finally succeeded and forced Libya to retreat, and additionally leave much equipment behind. Among the armored vehicles, guns, and artillery, one mildly damaged Hind was also found parked on an airfield in Kadi Daoum. After acquiring this intel, the CIA came up with a plan of claiming the aircraft before the Libyans would realize they're missing it and doing something about it. Acquiring a Hind in this way was definitely an easier strategy than taking it from the USSR directly. But that didn't mean it was a piece of cake. So let's see how it was done. Preparing the operation. The first step was getting a green light from the Chadian government, which the CIA accomplished quickly. Secondly, the authorities deployed people from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Group, also known as Night Stalkers. The CIA never wanted to leave the situation to chance, but rather plan it and organize it very carefully. For these reasons, they launched the preliminary operation called Mount Hope II in April of 1987 in New Mexico. They chose that location on purpose because it has dry desert conditions, similar to Cuddy Dome. CH-47 Chinooks from the 160th Echo Company were reconfigured to pull heavier weights. Additionally, reinforced hooks were fitted. The engine and transmissions were tuned ready to go on a demo mission. Night Stalkers pulled a few containers of water that were about the same weight as the Hind and transported them to an agreed location while stopping twice to refuel en route. Since the first try was successful, they repeated the whole process once again just to be sure. Measure twice, cut once. Afterwards, USA officials and CIA leadership were satisfied with the preliminary performance, so they declared an operation launch. The execution. Operation Mount Hope III officially started on May 21st, and Night Stalkers began their journey towards Germany first, loading 2 Chinooks aboard a C-5 Galaxy heavy airlift jet. After Germany, the next stop was N'Djamena Airfield in Chad. They temporarily sent an advanced echelon to scout and monitor enemy movement, while the French government also gave its contribution to the mission, providing soldiers and a few jets for support. A C-130 Hercules was put in place at checkpoints to provide fuel for the Chinooks. It seemed like the operation was very well prepared and that the executors hadn't missed anything while planning it. But let's continue to the practical part. Keep in mind that Libyan forces are still nearby. Some of them were even active in that area. Before Chalk 2 took off for N'Djamena, Chalk 1 had to go first to inspect the area to make sure there is no Libyan soldiers nearby. Otherwise, the USA would provoke an international scandal or even a skirmish. After Chalk 1 announced there were some Libyans left there, it cleared the location and started setting up the Hind for extraction. They started sling-loading the Hind and returned to N'Djamena afterwards. At the same time, the Libyans had no idea what was going on just a few miles away. It was the perfect crime, an outstanding operation even though it could have gone either way. Maybe it's best for everyone it turned out like this, without any casualties. Mild interferences. Although Night Stalkers didn't have any significant problems, they had some smaller obstructions, thanks to the unfavorable weather conditions. After Chalk 2 stopped twice to refuel, first at Faya-Largeau and secondly in Moussoro, while flying, Chalk 2 detected a 3,000-foot sandstorm while having only 45 minutes of flight before returning to home base. Chalk 2 reached N'Djamena literally seconds before the storm took place while flying through near-zero visibility. They waited for approximately 20 minutes for the storm to pass and took off again and entered American soil within 36 hours. The mission was fully completed after 67 hours in the country. It would have been a disaster if they had successfully avoided Libyans, only for the sandstorm to ruin their plans to capture the Hind. Apart from weather conditions, there were some other problems. The Libyans knew they had left a lot of equipment behind, including the Hind, and the Soviet Union knew it too. The USSR ordered the immediate bombing of the area in order to destroy everything that was left behind and deny enemy forces from getting hold of anything. Afterwards, the Libyans carried out many attacks from the air and managed to destroy some military equipment and even damage the Hind itself. Luckily, the damage was minor and the Hind was preserved, but unfortunately, one of its engines was impaired, so the soldiers refused to fly it and chose to carry it instead, while not taking any risks. It's worth mentioning that the Mount Hope III operation was the first major operation ever where Night Stalkers used CH-47s. What happened to the Hind after it was confiscated? Upon acquiring the Hind, the Americans began inspecting it and returned it to flying status for further evaluation. Afterwards, it was transferred to the Threat System Management Office and used to demonstrate its capabilities to other units. It was also used in training exercises, acting as an opposing force against both troops on the ground and U.S. helicopters. In 2012, the Southern Museum of Flight in Birmingham, Alabama, acquired the aircraft, and it successfully evaded scrapping. Its location remains unchanged till the present day. And to make things far more interesting, this is not the only Hind confiscated by foreigners. Not only America and France managed to acquire a Libyan Hind, but the British also captured one. The Soviets were definitely not happy. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and comment on this video. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like what we're doing and want us to continue with more cool content. Till the next time.